All right, this is Competitive Podcast, episode 10. It's 5 a.m. on Wednesday morning, this god-awful hour. With me is Dan, Will, David,
So, guys,
and we have a
Hey!
special we have a special guest with us today. Is Jason, also known as DromarX on Magic Online.
Hey guys, glad to be here. Well, glad to be
Thanks
here,
for-
but would prefer a different time.
Oh,
thanks
yeah.
for coming on.
That's what we all, besides Dan.
It's all because of this crazy European guy we have to have on this cast.
Yeah,
It's a European plan to get back at you for breaking up with England in the 18th century.
I figured.
It's working really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, so what have you guys been playing?
I've been doing the Pauper Gauntlet, and I'll talk a little more about that a bit later. I've also started a new series called The Modern Noob, but that is far outside the scope of this podcast. And we also did this amazing team battle with under MTGO Academy. Justin arranged it, and we had a team from this podcast pretty much. David was our captain.
Yeah,
and
coach.
Chris was on the team, and JPH Snake playing Love Train.
Yep.
So how did we do?
We lost.
Yeah,
We lost, but in the final round of the third game. So,
True, it was a very nail biter for sure.
and yeah, I am gonna do this. I've submitted a team to the Academy Showcase. It's gonna be me, Sneak Attack Kid, and a guy named Drinkard.
Cool.
So
It was really fun.
we have,
I'll say that.
yeah, we
Drinkard is a great
we have a
guy.
team going. Sneak Attack Kid is, of course, gonna be playing Mono Black Control, and I'm gonna be playing Elves, and the other guy's gonna be playing Stompy. So,
Nice. What's the name of the team?
Team Sneaky Tiny Little Green Men. So, yeah, Will.
Well, I'm definitely back outside of the scope of this podcast. I finally put together my Theros blocks deck. So I've been playing green, red ramp and Theros block constructed.
Yeah. Have they started doing like daily events? with
I
this
think
site?
after the maintenance today, the daily events rotate
Yeah, I think so too.
Sweet.
because it's still RTR block constructed. 8-man queues and 2-man queues for Theros block have pulled up, and I did an 8-man queue and I went 2-1, lost in the finals.
That's not too
Yeah.
bad.
Is the Reveler in your deck, Xenagos?
Yeah, I have 2 copies.
Nice.
He's hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes
Yeah.
he's really good. If you have creatures on the battlefield, he's amazing in that deck. If you don't, I mean, you still get the 2/2 haste, which is, fine. It kind of builds up your creature count, helps you get back from like an Angerly God Wrath or something like that. But you just pretty much lay dudes down and swing in, and you win.
Sounds like my kind of deck. Okay, back to Pauper.
All right, David, what you been up to?
Well, like Dan said, I coached on Sunday, but I've also gotten in 2 dailies this week, and one of them got to the last round with the BorosKitty, and then randomly MTGO shut down for like some percentage of the users, and so I could not complete that one. And then last night I did it and had my first O2 drop in I don't even remember how long. So my conclusion is that I think BorosKitty is no longer right for the meta, which is a bummer. Because I think it's probably just better to play BorosKitty because it allows you to cast multiple cheap threats on the same turn.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like Azorius Kitty was awesome for the meta that was before the bannings. It was everything, or Azorius Kitty was good against everything but
Yeah.
Fissure. But now it's like, I don't know about that so much
Yeah,
Is it the
anymore.
black control decks? That's a problem.
Well, that's not that big of an issue because mono black control is actually really easy to beat. But Trinket can be difficult if you don't have some way to interact with their graveyard to get rid of the Grim Harvest. So that's an issue.
That's a pretty grindy match, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super grindy. I don't think it's unfavorable if you don't have If you have like a relic or fairy macabre, you can win. It's not that big of a deal. But then you have to dedicate sideboard spot to that. That's an issue. Then the mono blue control list, where they just counter everything. You need like 3 or 4 copies of Train of Thought to win that if you want to. So there's like a bunch more sideboard dedication. Stompy's gone, Goblins is gone. All like the good matchups are gone, which is another issue. And then Slivers, the like one aggressive deck that still exists besides like Affinity, which is still a good matchup. Slivers is actually really hard because they get outside of the range of your blockers really quickly. All they need is if they have 3 lords and then like the flanking guy or the poisonous guy, it's really tough.
Yeah, the flanking guy, he's like I underestimated that guy a lot at first, but now I just kill him on sight.
Yeah, and you play BorosKitty, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so I think you would have a better matchup against them because you can actually take out their threats really early on.
Yeah, I do. It's just, yeah, they can definitely overwhelm you. I know what you're talking about.
Yep. I feel like Slivers is always just hoping for the nut draw, though. Because, like, every once in a while, putting together a Slivers deck, it's like, I'll get hands where it's like, I'll have, like, 2 of the flanking Slivers and 2 of the poisonous Slivers and, like, 3 lands. Yeah. And it's like, that hand's not very good, is it?
Pretty linear.
Yeah. So, yeah. And, Jason, what you been up to?
Well, I've been playing BorosKitty, aka Red-White Artifacts, as you guys know.
Yep.
I think I got in about 4 dailies with the deck in the past week. Started off slow with a 1-2 drop, but then 3 consecutive 3-1s, so that was pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah, and other than that, for standard, I've been messing around with some mono red lists. Haven't found anything I'm super excited on, but still working on it. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know what to do with standard right now with Hellriders gone.
Yeah, it's a lot different.
Red was compensated.
Yeah, they got the Devotion guy, right?
And Chandra.
Devotion. Yeah, Devotion guy who nugs your opponent, and then Chandra.
They also got Storm Breath Dragon, which is like mini Hellkite.
Say mini Thundermaw? No, nothing will ever come. Nothing will ever come close to Thundermaw.
Retard more.
So that's cool. All right, I've been playing Mono Black Control in daily events, and I'm doing really well with it. Been featuring Gray Merchants, two in the main, one on the side. And start off, I did a 2-2, and it was kind of disappointing because I don't remember what it beat me, but it was I got beat in the finals, and I was like, oh man, that was the first time I took a control deck to a daily event, and a real control deck, not Delver. And I lost in the finals there. And then I played again, and I got a 3-1. That was on video too. Only got beat by Perilous Affinity. God, that deck is so scary.
That's the thing.
So have you guys played against that deck yet?
Not yet.
I have not.
Nah, me neither.
God, it's so insane. Game 1, he drew 30 cards of his library in 6 turns.
Yeah, I figure that deck can outdraw BorosKitty even.
Yeah, that deck can outdraw anything. I think outside of like an Infinite Freed from the Real, that deck can outdraw anything. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. And yeah, so that was the only guy who beat me, but I beat another Perilous Affinity list in the 4th round with Mono Black Control. Played again, and I got beat by White Weenie twice, which is really depressing because like I should have a good matchup against White Weenie, being a Mono Black Control player, but it's like they always have it, they always have everything.
All the loyal Cathars.
Yeah, like the loyal Cathars, and so it's like I finally take care of everything, and then he drops the Squadron Hawk. I'm like, oh crap, okay, well, I deal with the Squadron Hawks for the next 3 turns or so, and then like over the course of those turns, he's drawing like Bone Splitters, right? So he's like 3 Bone Splitters on the table, and like, okay, well, I dealt with all the Squadron Hawks, I'm fine, but then he top decks Loyal Cathar, and after you spend 2 turns dealing with that, and then Then he draws a Guardian of the Guild pack, and I have no verdict. I'm like, crap. And he has 3 Bone Splitters on the table, so I'm just dead. So, yeah, but then I did another one, and I went 3-1 again, and I think I lost to a Trinket deck, but it was pretty good still. I feel pretty good with Mono Black Control. Probably taking it again. I know I actually bought the Unearths instead of borrowing them now because I actually feel so good with Mono Black Control that I'm willing to take it to another daily.
Nice.
Also, Delver's just a complete buy with Mono Black Control. I beat Mezzle in a daily event.
Sweet.
It was pretty sweet.
It's always
He's
cause
got,
for celebration.
Yeah. Well, I mean, considering he's like the Delver player, you know. So it always feels really good to beat Mezzle in a daily event. To beat somebody of like, you know, that play level.
Caliber, yeah.
Yep. All right. So we have finance stuff to move into, though.
Yeah, I'd like to start by mentioning that short-term speculation, shots calling, etc., is really dangerous for you, and people think that that is the way to do Magic Finance, because you only hear the success stories and people don't really do calculations. But I have a guest here with a success story, Will.
Yeah. So I didn't even mean to make this call. All I was doing was I heard that Mono Blue Devotion was going to be a deck, so I wanted to put it together before the Pro Tour happened. So I did, and it was okay. I mean, I wasn't, you know, the hugest fan. It was kind of dirtily, but I had like some aggressiveness to it thanks to Master of the Waves. So my deck, like in the top end, had 4 copies of Masters of the Wave and 4 copies of Vasa, all 8 cards I got for under 5 ticks originally, and then Pro Tour Champion plays Mono Blue Devotion, and all of my cards skyrocket. I sold them all for around 22 ticks a piece, and I just made a freaking killing.
Yeah, they crashed now
Nice.
since then.
Oh yeah, I'm actually gonna rebuy. So I'm gonna get the 8 play sets and probably still profit about 100 ticks.
That's nice.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Good call. If we get back to Pauper Finance then, Pauper cards have a tendency to... Most speculators stay away from Pauper cards because Pauper cards tend to move all over the place randomly. For example, last week Chain Lightning dropped 70% for no reason whatsoever. And then it went back up a bit. So, and right now, Ninja of the Deep Hours, you could buy it this morning for 19 cents. It sold for 89 cents last week. So you can't buy them for 19 cents anymore because I bought them all, I think. But what I recommend anyone interested in financing their Pauper by some long-term speculation then is to think about, go for like double in a year and you can easily get it in Pauper. Use MTG Goldfish, use their collection function, and monitor all the cards you're interested in. And look at the Pauper cards that are in maybe 20 cents to $1.50, because they will, at some point, you will be able to buy them for less than 33 cents and sell them for $1 to human, and then you don't have to pay the bot rake. So that is my number 1 tip for any Pauper specs. And right now, Ninja of the Deep Hours and also a modern common Serum Visions is extremely low right now. Overall, modern cards have suffered a lot due to due to Teros and the Pro Tour. So right now, all modern cards pretty much are tanking, and there's a lot of things to speculate in there.
So should I sell my shock lanes yet?
No, you should start to sweat in February.
Alright. I'll keep the shock lanes then. I still have some like 50 some odd shock lanes that I'm holding on to. Hoping for the right time to sell. I want to be like 10. Why aren't they like 10 yet?
They have been speculated in a lot. But eventually they are not being drafted, so people will need them more and more, and I estimate that February is a good point to sell.
Alright.
And if they haven't gone up, then
So,
people will start to panic in May. And in May you should not have any shock lands, pretty much.
What is the price of
Alright.
Serum Visions right now? I kind of want to get some for Pauper anyways.
Serum Visions, I bought a lot of them this morning for 29 cents.
No way!
And they have
Wow.
been $2 on
I'm
2
buying them
occasions.
right now.
So that's definitely a good card to buy.
What's a
Yeah, make sure you too that there's 2 different versions of Serum Visions. There's whatever set it was printed in and promo
Yeah.
versions.
Yes,
So does that make a difference?
Yes,
Ian, when
yeah,
you're
you
you're
never buy the promo versions because they're much more expensive. They move more slowly, and that's advanced finance to deal with the promo cards. Pretty much, promo cards are usually more expensive, but there are exceptions.
Yeah, I usually say there's definitely exceptions because Quirion Rangers for the longest time were way cheaper in the promo versions than the Visions version.
Absolutely. So pretty much what you can do is go to MTGO Traders and search for the card, and they will show you all the versions and their current price. And their price is accurate in the sense that you'll see which one is the cheaper.
All right.
a good card that
So
you might want to, if you don't have them, is the fetch lands. They were rising for a while, and right after Theros release, took a huge hit. Some of them going down like almost 10 ticks a piece. I really don't think that they stay down that low. Most of them are around 10 ticks. They usually hover somewhere around the 15 tick mark. So I would definitely buy in now if you're like missing like your arid maces.
They will
your marsh
spike
flats.
insanely in May, June.
Yeah.
And they are definitely in the risk of being reprinted during 2014.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be reprinted in current block. I highly doubt it. But
No, I actually think they will, but that's a deeper discussion. And also the Onslaught lands, but they're definitely on the high risk for Modern Masters 2, which is
Well, I mean,
not unlikely to come during 2014.
all right.
Right.
So we need to move along,
Yes,
guys.
I mentioned the Pauper Gauntlet finals just briefly, after 2 months, 3 months almost. We now have 2 decks remaining. And one deck is Illusory Tricks, which is a mono blue tempo deck that is not Delver. And the other deck is BorosKitty, which is very interesting. So to get to this point, I would have to be in the Pauper Gauntlet matches done 7-0. And 45 decks have been eliminated on the way. But BorosKitty remains, so this discussion will be very interesting. The first round of the finals is tomorrow on my YouTube channel, Magic Gathering Strat.
Tune in.
All right. Sweet.
Look, BorosKitty.
So, speaking of BorosKitty, Jason, let's talk about you for a little bit. How long have you been playing Magic?
I got into the game about Mercadian Mask Block, that era, and right around when Invasion was released, obviously. If you can guess from like the moniker I use online, Dromar, it's a card from the Invasion.
Mm-hmm.
As for Pauper, I didn't really start playing competitively until a couple of years ago, and only got into Magic Online about a year and a half ago now. So I started playing Pauper, I guess a little over a year now, last summer. So started on White Weenie, but that got old really fast, losing to post decks with it. And moved to Goblins after that, which I liked a lot. Even wrote a primer on it.
Yeah, I read your primer yesterday.
Yeah, it's really, I put a lot of work into that one, really in depth.
Where can people read that?
They can find that either on MTG Salvation or on the new Pauper site, castingcommons.com.
Right.
Yep.
And I also briefly played Stompy for a couple months towards the end of the bannings, just to switch it up a bit. Not because I was thinking Goblins was bad or anything, it was still a good deck, but just wanted to try something a little different. And that was a fun deck to play. So yeah.
Yeah.
And so BorosKitty, that's what we're here to talk about, right? Okay.
Yeah. Why do you play BorosKitty over Goblins?
Well,
Why play BorosKitty over anything?
I've been playing BorosKitty for a few months. It was my tournament practice room deck. I'm sure everyone has one of those. Yeah, it was not a good matchup with the post decks in the old format. As everything else I felt pretty comfortable playing against, but post decks, even dedicating 4 Molten Rains in the sideboard, were still very, very, very tough. So with the bannings coming down, which I wasn't necessarily happy with, I thought the meta was okay myself, but with post gone, I figured it was the perfect time to pull this deck out of the tournament practice room and actually start running into dailies with it. Since I had a list which I felt was pretty refined, and I could actually remove the land destruction from my sideboard and dedicate a bit more to aggro and other various decks.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah, I know. Like I've noticed playing BorosKitty, it's like it's okay against the field, but it's not great against anything.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
Yeah.
I think the one deck it is very good against, I find, is Delver, but this might just be in part of the way I play the matchup, because I've seen other BorosKitties just get run over by Delver, but
Well, what do you do?
Yeah,
my own style is just sit there, like, because I feel I have the long game inevitability tied up. I see other players try to aggro the Delver player out with their Glinthawks, with their Skyfishers, and all that does is just let Delver players start casting ninjas on them with their fairies.
Yep.
So you sit back with the
I just
burn in
sit
your hand?
behind. Yeah, I just sit behind my flyers until I feel I have full control of the game. Peck away at them with like tokens, Goblin tokens, Mirror tokens.
Yeah, I saw you switch to that.
Yeah, Origin Spellbomb. That's the one big difference I have from most of the other BorosKitty players, I think.
What did you cut for it?
Yeah, definitely.
You shaved like your Wellspring too, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. I think the original list that I had was 4 Faithless Looting, 4 Rebirth, 4 Wellspring. There was something else. I know I cut 1 Looting, 1 Rebirth, 1 Wellspring, and then one other card that I can't really remember at the moment.
Remember the Fallen or Sanctum Gargoyle?
It was probably one of the Sanctum Gargoyles, because my list the original list I had was 3 Sanctum Gargoyles, and I cut those for 2 Sanctifiers. So probably the Spellbomb took one of those slots too.
Some people run Elsewhere Flask as well.
Yeah, that's if you really want an additional cantrip artifact, but I found even just 7 has been more than enough for me.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Spellbombs sort of count as cantrip
Yeah.
artifacts. So, hey, there you go. What you really like the Delver matchup, but what decks do you really don't want to play against?
The big one, mono black control. That's just not a very fun matchup for the deck. The corrupt based ones, they're actually not too bad. I find you can aggro them out with enough pressure, and I don't know, sometimes you can actually outdraw them, depending how it goes. But the ones that are based around Crypt Rats and Unearth, those are just really bad usually, I find. Just because the typical style of the deck, you're not putting on a lot of pressure. So they're just free to play Crypt Rats, wrath your board over and over again. And it's pretty hard to gain any footing against them. So I think that's probably the absolute worst match in the current format.
What about Hexproof?
Hexproof is pretty bad too. If you look at my sideboard, I've adapted 2 Celestial Flares, which is pretty much for Hexproof primarily, but can also bring them in against decks like Killing Fiend, Nivik Cyclops, and other random aggro, I guess. The Hexproof, game 1 against Hexproof, it's pretty close to a bye for them, because all you've got is 2 Sanctifiers and a Singleton O-Ring if you're playing something like my list. Those are pretty slow. Another match I'm not particularly fond of is the Trinket Control decks, the blue-black ones. Mostly just ones with Grim Harvest, like his. I think David touched upon it earlier with his BorosKitty. That's a pretty annoying card to play against for this kind of decks.
Yeah.
And I currently don't have any great names, but those games popular have to consider that. Yeah, those are what I think are the worst matchups for the deck, though.
Huh. Okay. But, you already touched on what you run over, which is Delver.
Yeah.
What other decks do you just consider buys?
I don't know if there's anything I consider a true buy. Even Delver, they have a chance to beat you, but I think beyond the Delver, the Kiln Fiend matchup is pretty solid because you're running so much cheap removal. You can play against their little counter your removal game often, because you just have another bolt after your first bolt, or you start with a Journey to Nowhere and back it up with a couple bolts, or a bolt and a Pyroblast, or a Galvanic Blast. So there's lots of ways to fight through their disruption. Affinity I've always found pretty good. I haven't played against Perilous Affinity builds yet, so I don't know how that would go entirely. I imagine you probably have to start bringing our traditional Affinity. I find it's a pretty solid matchup, especially with two main deck Necrotals in the form of Core Sanctifiers.
Yeah.
Those help out a lot. Yeah, I find Elves is pretty easy usually, especially bringing in Electrickery. You can even blow up their Spider Silk Armors.
Yeah.
So they can't make it dead. Yeah, go ahead.
I think a lot of people who are playing Elves are just hoping to not run into Crypt Rat decks.
Yeah.
Which seems really unlikely right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elves has really dwindled. All green decks have.
Sell your Spider Silk Armors, they're over 4 tickets.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I see a lot of different playstyles with BorosKitty, and I know from playing a lot of BorosKitty, I try never to cast like my Dream Stalkers or more Core Skyfishers without
getting value.
Yeah. Do you play that way too, or are you a fan of the turn one, like, artifact land into Glinthawk?
I'm pretty sad if I'm ever doing that, but it depends on the situation. The last day I played, I played against an Elves deck. My opening hand was like a full burst spells and just a bunch of creatures, factors. He turned Mercury on, I thought he was obvious, so bolted it on site. Then he was Mercury on. Something, I forget what it was, something tipped me off he was Elves though. So I never drew a Prophetic Prism or a Wellspring that game, so I just started going aggro mode on him and killed him before he ever did anything relevant. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta do that. You don't want to, but you do what you gotta do.
Huh.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The other thing I was wondering about is how important do you feel like the Goblin Token card is? I forgot what it's called now.
Rebirth?
Yeah.
Kodotha Rebirth. I'm not really big on the card. It's actually the card I probably cut the most often after boarding.
Yeah, it's the card I'm always like, I hope my opponent plays against me when they're playing that.
Yeah, it's not great. It's good at stemming the tide against aggro. Against Affinity, it can like buy you like 12 life or more if they have ATOG in play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I usually find though I have something better to bring in for it most games post sideboard. But
yeah, I've been testing with the deck quite a bit, and yeah, the Kodotha Rebirth is almost always the first cut.
Maybe that's the role of it, that it's good to have a card that you always sideboard out. So
Yeah.
a placeholder before you know what you really need.
yeah,
I don't think it's wrong, but maybe there's just a better card that should go in that slot. That's all I think.
it's possible.
Even the people playing the deck don't want to play it.
The one thing I do like about the card is against like the mono black or trinket decks, it protects your guys from verdicts, guest verdicts or diabolic edicts, which is pretty helpful.
Yeah, I suppose
Of
that's true.
course, it's not strong against crypt rats, but the deck as a whole isn't very strong against crypt rats. So
True.
Yeah, it's also actually pretty good against like mono blue control.
Yeah.
Where you can just get a horde of dudes
good
down.
against them. Yeah.
You get a horde of dudes down. And they only have they have the Spire Golem to block, or they have a Seagate Oracle to block, but they only have the one creature that can block. And and if you have any burn backed up, then those Goblin tokens are just going to peck 3 life away.
Yeah, it really forces them to do something too, which is always where you want to have the mono blue control player.
Yep.
Isn't one of the strengths of this deck, like goblins, you can be aggro or control depending on the situation, and without the rebirths you lose the ability to be aggro.
You're not really getting aggro, at least not the way I play the deck, but I know some people...
Against control decks you're aggro.
You are.
Right?
That's why you leave them in against mono black control, you leave them in against trinket control. Those are like all main decks that you have to play aggro against, but pretty much anything else you can play more against.
Yeah, but my point then being that if you got the rebirth, you can't be aggro enough to match up with controllers.
Yeah, they are good for that purpose. David was saying to cut them. I don't know what the best option would be if you're not running them, because you definitely need some kind of threat for the control match.
Yeah, something. What I thought about a lot is the 2/2 persist guy. That a lot of Stompy decks run. I think he's
elite.
Yeah, he's pretty cute in a lot of these types of decks because he's a bigger threat than the 1/1s, and you can rebuy him.
Yeah, with the Skyfisher.
Yeah, with your Skyfishers. And reset him.
It's a thought. It's also a pretty strong card against like aggro decks like goblins. They hate that card.
Yeah, so I don't think it's... I think there's a lot of other types of options. I just feel like there's sort of an overemphasis on the artifact theme sometimes in that deck. Like, I've seen some builds where it's like 4 of the return spell. Gosh, I'm so bad with names.
Remember the Fallen?
Yeah, Remember the Fallen.
Yeah.
And then just like all the gargoyles, like 4 of them, and it's just... They plan on just really abusing these artifacts when really, like, Core Skyfisher lets you abuse any permanent.
Yeah.
And you don't do that. So,
yeah, Core Skyfisher is easily discarded in the deck.
Yeah.
Anyways.
That's what I felt like it has to be too.
Yeah.
There's always one of them. That or Spreading Seas, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Sanctum Gargoyles and Remember the Fallen?
Sanctum Gargoyle, I tried it out. Like I said earlier, I had it in my initial list as a 3 of. I liked that it gave you a lot of inevitability, since you could just start chaining them at the end of the game. If someone killed them, you get one back with the other one. But I don't know.
Did that happen often?
It didn't happen often, and even against the post decks when I was originally playing them, it didn't matter. Because they just capsized your board or whatever. They don't even care that you could bring them back, because you have all your lands in your hand anyways, so... yeah, I found they were a little too slow. Yeah, I found they were a little too slow for what I wanted to do with the deck, usually. They might be worth revisiting for, like, mono black control matchup, though. You can get nerfed by a bit of graveyard hate, but most mono black decks are only running, like, a Bajuka Bog as their graveyard hate, so... It might be worthwhile to shore up that matchup a bit.
What's the deal with the single living ring? Everybody's running it, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's just a nice main deck answer to anything. You don't want to run too many of them, because Pauper's still a pretty fast format. But yeah, it's nice to have that game 1, just to answer... It's usually just another creature removal, but, you know, it can take out anything. Anything troublesome, random Rancor out of Stompy, your opponent's Journey to Nowhere if they have that, so on.
It's the single card I find myself wanting to top deck all the time. Oh, please, Oblivion Ring!
Yeah.
Would you, if you had to cut a Journey or the Oblivion Ring, what would you do? Would you do 3 Splitter's Ghost Journey?
So we're talking Cyborg or just with main deck?
I guess which one would you prefer to do?
I'd probably cut a Journey.
Okay.
I just like the utility that the O-ring offers.
Yeah, I've went with that same split, the 3-1, and then left the journey in the sideboard for creature matchups.
So speaking of matchups, why don't we talk about how you sideboard?
Sure, I'll pull out the sideboard guide I wrote up.
All right.
And like I always say this to people when I'm talking sideboarding, you have to keep an open mind about sideboarding. Never have some set plan that you're going to stick to no matter what. But what I generally do, I'll talk about it. So I'll just run down the list here. So against the Cyclops Kiln Fiend deck, I'm usually taking out my Sanctifiers, taking out my Rebirths. Then I usually cut either a Spellbomb or a Wellspring. And I bring in my 4 Pyroblasts, my Celestial Flares. I was bringing in Standard Bearer for a while before I had Celestial Flare, just because I had space and I felt it was better than what I was taking out. Just because it made forced them to do something before they combo, but they usually had the bolt, so it didn't do a lot for me. I'm not using that anymore, but it's an option if you really have the space. So yeah, I think this matchup is a pretty good one though. And then post board, I feel it should get. Well, it's throwing in Hydro Blaster, but I've yet to draw it against them, but I really want to wreck Cyclops players' day with it.
Yeah, I copied your list and I was running it a little bit last night in the tournament practice room, and yeah, Celestial Flare really is the bee's knees against that deck because they never see it coming.
And the only out they have, I'm pretty sure, is like Dispel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've likely spent the Dispel because I'm usually trying to Galvanic Blast their creatures or whatever the second they come down, and that's usually what causes them to spend their Dispel. So when I Celestial Flare them after they combo off, or when they see it in my hand after attacking and probing me, they're just like, aw.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm not winning this turn.
Yeah, that's another good thing about Celestial Flare this matchup. I had a primary practice, but it helps a lot of Cyclops too. Something on Delver. Again, I take all the reverse. Usually down style bumps around maybe 1 Wellspring. Bring in Pyroblast, Electrickeries for their fairies, and then possibly the Singleton Disenchant just for Spire Golems. Sometimes some of them bring in what's that enchantment, Coral Net against you. You can use it on that too sometimes. So yeah, the Delver matchup, I don't like Rebirths against them. They're usually the ones on the offensive. Like, you can nickel and dime them with it, but I find you just want Electrickery because you really want to stop their fairies from overrunning you. Because yeah, this was what I experienced personally. I left Rebirths in my first circle deck and I with 2 of them in my hand against Delver, 2 fairies. So ever since I've been trying Electrickery, and I found it's been a lot better for me in that matchup specifically. You just want to be the control deck. You want to just sit there as long as you can, like I said earlier. Make them beat you. Like, don't give them the opportunity to ninja you. If they have any fairies on the board, I just don't attack them at all with my flyers. I'll just be content to chip away at them with mirror tokens, or if it's game 1, maybe some goblin tokens.
So what if you have like 2 Glint Hawks on the board and they just have a cloud of fairies?
I usually start attacking with one. I'm fine doing work attention. If they want to snap my Glint Hawks, so I can play and return Profit Prism, try hard.
What if I play spells?
Then it's quite a bit different discussion, because you don't really want them to be rebuying their spell sprites.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I specifically said Cloud of Fairies.
Yeah.
Because rebuying the spell sprites actually matters quite a bit against your deck.
Yeah.
I know. And that's usually how I beat BorosKitty, because I'm.
Yeah, that is.
When I'm playing it.
Yeah.
So when I'm playing it in tournament or not in tournament practice, in daily events, I'm 3-0 against BorosKitty with Delver. And it's usually because Spellstutter Sprite just wrecks them.
Yeah.
Turn after turn.
That's pretty much the main way Delver's going to beat this deck. Their Spellstutter Sprite draws. If they don't have those, I find you're like really favored. Like I said, you can just sit there and draw a lot more cards than they do. Kill all their Spire Golems, kill all their Delvers. Let their fairies just stare at your flyers. It's a good day. Alright, so mono black control, I actually have no sideboard for them at the moment.
Is it just because like you don't think anything is worth coming in, or you just have a?
I used to have 2 circle protection blacks for them, but
Yeah, they can't win against that.
they can't win against that. But I still need to kill them.
Yeah.
That's a big problem I had with circle protection. And I'm usually drawing more cards than them, so decking them maybe not a realistic option.
So you were decked in those games?
I would be, yes, more or less.
All right.
Because I'm usually way ahead of them on cards, just from all the cantripping, and they're just running Sign of Blood mostly.
Yeah, Sign of Blood and Ragers and whatnot. Yeah, and even Circle of Protection Black doesn't even really work anymore because they have Grey Merchants now. All these decks running Grey Merchants, so...
I haven't had the pleasure of playing against too many Grey Merchants yet.
They're so awesome.
I'm sure it's an aggro player's nightmare.
It's it's really funny. It's like the Grey Merchants are good in the matchups you don't think they'd be good in, and like against the matchups where you think they'd be good, they're just not as impressive. Like Grey Merchants, they're not that great against slivers.
Too slow.
For example. Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, my sideboard plan for mono black control is what they call in programming the ostrich algorithm, where you just ignore the problem by sticking your head in the ground. So I just hope to not play mono black control right now, basically. Yeah, like I said earlier, that's the deck's worst matchup, I think, in the format. Luckily, it's not too popular at the moment, but it does seem to be picking up a bit.
Yeah, just because it's so good.
So because you only have you have 8 threats, well 11. They always have I'll just kill all your guys and you'll mill yourself playing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty hard to fight against them with this deck. Like I said earlier, Sanctum Gargoyle may be a consideration. They don't usually have a ton in the way of graveyard hate, so you might be able to overload their removal with that. So yeah, moving on, mono blue control. I found this matchup has been not too bad. Maybe I just haven't played a really good mono blue control player yet though. But I think I'm like 3-1 or something against it in daily so far. And the one loss, I punted big time. It was a pretty embarrassing play I made. Basically, I filtered white into white mana with my Prophetic Prism, so I couldn't Pyroblast his Exclude on my Glinthawk.
Oh, man.
And yeah, he countered everything I did after that. And the game would have been so much different if I had that Glinthawk in play. So, and that's something to keep in mind with this deck. Tap your mana very carefully. And also don't use your Prophetic Prisms like an idiot.
Yeah, it's pretty important to not, tap your mana like an idiot. I've done it a few times playing this deck too, where I'll tap my mana wrong and I realize I could have played like an extra Glinthawk or something that turn if I hadn't, tapped my white, if I hadn't tapped my plains and left a Great Furnace open or something like that.
It's definitely something we really have to think about a lot. It's not something I mess up too often anymore, thankfully. So yeah, for mono blue, I usually like to board down on bolts, board down on the O-ring, maybe take out a couple spell bombs, and then you just bring in Pyroblast and Disenchant. I find you can usually pace with them pretty well as far as drawing cards goes. Sometimes they get ahead, but you're usually able to get something on board at that point.
Yeah, it's... So how do you sequence? Like, how do you try and sneak around with counter spells? Because I always assume that the mono blue control player has tons of counter spells.
You just really gotta start jamming threats as soon as you can.
Okay.
I find what they don't do very often though is counter your prisms or your wellsprings, which if they did, it's like really bad for you a lot of the time. But just because you have nothing for value to return with your Glinthawks or Skyfishers if those aren't around. And
yep.
I think that's a key to beating this deck with mono blue control is that you have to counter the counter.
Yeah, and Delver too. Like I think a lot of them are I guess they're too proud to counter your cantrip card. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. I say my rule of thumb is I'm not going to waste a hard counter spell on a prophetic prism if I'm running fairies. But I will spell stutter the prisms to no
You
end
will spell stutter anything.
if I have the ability. Yeah, I'll pretty much anything you can get value off the spell.
Yeah, you're a spell stutter whore.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
No need for name call.
a lot of people just they try and jam stuff out there, and they don't think that they think that I'm too proud to waste a spell stutter. I'm like, it's not really a waste. If I'm denying you a card, and I'm getting a fairy in return, well, I'm pretty okay with that.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Yeah, and post board the Pyroblasts help you a lot. If they're only on 3 mana, that's often only one counter spell. They might have like a Hydroblast or Dispel backup, but you have a reasonable chance of sneaking a threat through. That's really the key to the matchup. You gotta sneak some sort of threat through, whether it be a Kodotha Rebirth or even just some spell bombs can start chipping away at them, make them do something.
Yep.
Moving on, Stompy. This matchup I think is pretty reasonable. It's you're not an overwhelming favorite or anything, and their Rancor draws are definitely really hard to deal with. Usually what I do here is just bring in like all the removal, bring in the standard bearers. You cut Sanctifiers because they're just like a Riot Devils, they're not doing anything. Trim down on spell bombs, maybe trim down on a Rebirth or 2. Maybe Faithless Looting, you can cut like one of those. I usually like to keep most of my Faithless Lootings though, just to pull ahead in the late game. Because Faithless Looting is basically a draw 2 as the game goes on. But yeah, Standard Bearer is really the card you want to see the most here, of course. I bring in Celestial Flare too, which is not great obviously, but it's removal. If they have Young Wolf and Safe Hold Elite, obviously it's not going to be great against them. Yeah, this matchup, it can be pretty tough at times. You really need a heavy hand of cheap burn, so you can interact with them as soon as possible, because you don't have a lot of time to dirtle around here.
Do you bring in Electricity too?
I do bring in Electricity. It's in part for ledge walkers, because you just want a way to deal with them. Your flyers can block them, of course, but that's not always a reliable plan.
Flare seems really important to deal with hungered ledgewalkers.
Yeah, that's pretty much your only out to that, unless you can somehow double block it or something, but then you're just waiting to get blown up by a Groundswell or a Binds of Vastwood.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind is that a lot of them are bringing Gleeful Sabotage against you, and well, I wouldn't necessarily say board out your Journey to Nowheres. It's just something you should be aware of, that they might get blown up, so that Young Wolf you hit under a Journey to Nowhere might be coming back at some point. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, it's aggro deck, so pretty straightforward to play against. You just want to kill all their guys and pull ahead with your Faithless Lootings later. And this is something that's obvious to most people who play Pauper, but always main phase your removal against them. The one exception being, maybe in the later game you can afford to try and 2-for-1 their Rancor that's in their hand, if you know they're just drawing off the top. But generally you don't want to be casting burn spells on their turn, because you're just asking to take an extra 4 damage from Binds of Vastwood or Groundswell.
Yeah, it's something I learned a long time ago, is that main phase removal, because I was playing as a Stompy player for a while, and I learned that when people main phase removal, I was much less happy.
So the affinity matchup, usually you're just bringing your Gorilla Shamans, your Disenchant, and my new edition Celestial Flare is pretty good against them too, I find. And again, I'm cutting, maybe cut 1 Wellspring and a couple Spell Bombs or a couple Rebirths, either. I tend to like the Rebirths a bit more on the draw, just because I find you want them more for stabilizing purposes. But the spell bomb's still fine too. It's usually gain 4 life and a cantrip to help you find more removal. I don't play Ancient Grudge, which is a popular sideboard hate card some people have. I just find the Shaman is really good. It's so good against Affinity. If anyone's ever played Gorilla Shaman against Affinity, you know how fun it is for you and how annoying it is for them just to blow up all their lands. And I find the way Affinity beats you most often is just when they ATOG fling you. So, like, taking away that possibility is huge for the matchup. Like I said, I haven't played against Perilous Affinity yet. That deck seems really scary.
Yeah, it's. Saying that's where I think the Gorilla Shaman on your board is definitely better against Perilous Affinity than Ancient Grudge, because the Perilous Affinity they don't miss their land drops, and they draw 30 cards in 6 turns. Then they're gonna get the ATOG fling online.
They're gonna find it at some point. So being able to being able to constrain their resources will help a lot in that regard.
Yes, it will.
But yeah, for that matchup, I'd probably consider bringing in Power Blasts. I don't usually like to bring those in against Affinity because they usually just have like Thought Cast and maybe a couple Hover Guards, and that's it. But once they're up to 8 targets, it's a bit more appealing.
Yeah.
I guess it would be nicer if Perilous research was sacrificed at a cost, though. Just so you get 2 for 1 them.
Alright.
Let's see. Hexproof. Here I board out all my Journeys, O-Ring, Lightning Bolts, then maybe like Spell Bomb and Rebirth for the extra space if you need it. But mostly just the Journeys and O-Rings, or the big cards that come out here. You do kind of want a way to answer Aura Gnarlids, but I find you can usually Gallop Blast them, because really the card you're looking to draw the most is Patrician Scorn.
Yep.
But yeah, a lot of the cards you're bringing in are situational. Like Standard Bearer might not do anything against them if they already have a big guy in play. Electrickery doesn't do anything if they already have Ethereal Armor on a guy. But
questions I had for you.
Sure.
Throughout this is why not Circle Protection Green?
I've just never found it necessary. It's an option, but you can. The thing is, the Stompy decks, they're already bringing Gleeful Sabotage against you usually, like I touched upon earlier. So it's probably not even gonna lock them out of the game necessarily.
That's kind of what I was figuring you'd say, but
yeah,
it's just wondering.
Yeah. Against Hexproof, it might be a more reasonable option, Circle Protection Green, because they usually don't have any enchantment removal, or if they do, it's like maybe 1 or 2 cards, so might be something worth considering for that matchup. But against Stompy, I don't think it's really what you want to do.
Yeah, and it's really hard to leave up Circle Protection mana against Stompy too. Because they have 7 threats on the board, and you're like, well, I can't leave 7 mana on tap because I don't do anything this turn if I do that.
But yeah, the Hexproof matchup, like I said before, it's basically a buy for them game 1. You just have to hope they have a really bad hand. Then it's a bit better game 2 and game 3. But yeah, some of your cards are situational that they won't always work. I don't know if there's a lot else to say about that deck. It does what it does.
What about a card that's noticeably missing in your sideboard is Lone Missionary? What about the burn match?
Sure, I can touch upon that. Yeah, the burn matchup is not great. Like you said, Lone Missionary is a good one in that matchup. I used to have I think a couple in my sideboard. I just moved them out for different cards, and yeah, they're definitely not a bad card. I just found against most other aggro decks, I just like having more removal instead.
Yep.
But yeah, if Burn ever becomes popular, it's definitely something I'd revisit. Kabir Crossroads does help that matchup a little bit, but they can still just kill you because you're not. We talked about going into aggro mode with our creatures before, where we just play them for no value. This is the Burn matchup's probably one time you really do want to do that because you're often racing them. But obviously, if you can rebuy a Kabir Crossroads in that matchup, it's huge for you. Yeah, I think with my current list, I don't really have any sideboard plan for Burn.
Not standard bears?
You can bring in standard bears for sure. That's
so standard bears
that's
is
a
really
game
good.
3 life at least. So it's like sort of a lone missionary, I guess, in that regard. A bit worse, but yeah, just the standard bears. Other than that, not too many changes to make there. White Weenie, you play it like most other aggro decks, but you can also bring in Disenchant. Just because they usually have their own Journey to Nowheres, and they usually have Razor Golem, and Bone Splitter's another one that's pretty annoying. Other than that, I bring in Electricity and Flare, just more removal spells. And Sanctifier is obviously pretty good against them too, especially if they're running Razor Golem. Just to be able to Necrotal that guy. The big problem in the White Weenie matchup is definitely Guardian of the Guild Pact. That card is actually just a problem in general. I played against a blue-white Trinket Mage deck recently that was playing that card. I think it's like the Pauper adaptation of Cobblade. That's what it's supposed to be. Yeah, he just put 2 Bone Splitters on a Guardian of the Guild Pact, and I couldn't do a lot about that.
Yeah, you just gotta hope to burn him out at that point.
Though the Spell Bombs, one thing with the Spell Bombs is you actually can chump the Guardian of the Guild Pact for a few turns. So that helps at least. And you have Celestial Flare to possibly work around it post-board, but not necessarily, because they can put a lot of threats on the board. Let's see some other decks. Elves, I usually just bring in Electricity and Disenchant. Disenchant for usually Spider Silk Armor, another out to that. But it can also answer a Viridian Longbow, which, embarrassingly enough, I lost a game to Elves against that card. Just because he killed all my Hawks, all my guys, all my tokens, and just...
Yeah, Viridian Longbow is actually a win condition for Elves.
And I just never drew a Sanctifier or a Disenchant for that game. But yeah, Elves pretty straightforward to play against. Electricity really wrecks their day. And I guess something I should say, you want to save your removal for their guys that matter. Like the Mana Dorks, they don't usually matter, especially when they're in top deck mode. But you really need to kill those Timberwatch Elves, especially.
Yeah, Timberwatch and Priest of Titania.
Yeah, and the 4-mana guy, the Huntmaster, whatever he's called. That makes tokens. You don't want to let that guy stick around. And Koldeltha Rebirth is pretty good here just because they can't swarm you out as easily. That's like how you're going to lose a lot of games to Elves too. Just by them having like 10 Elves on the board, you can only block 1 a turn.
Yep.
Let's see. Slivers, again, you bring in the aggro hate package. Electricries. They're obviously not good against one of the lords in play, but they have a number of 1/1 slivers. And another card I found to be really annoying is Hive Stirrings. So, yeah, you really want a way to deal with that efficiently. Celestial Flares are obviously solid against them. Not amazing, but they're fine. I haven't played against Slivers a ton, but I find it's a reasonably good matchup.
They're always just hoping for the nut draw, and sometimes they get it, and there's not too much you can do about it. But
and one strategy kind of thing. You probably want to burn their lords as opposed to Journey to Nowhere then, because like Stompy, a lot of them are bringing Gleeful Sabotage against you, and you really don't want them to blow up 2 journeys and get 2 lords back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward deck to play against. And yeah, like I said, I also said this earlier, Sidewinder Sliver, I gained a new respect for that card, because you really can't block them very well with it in play.
Yeah, it almost says all your slivers are unblockable, is the way I've read it.
It pretty much does, yeah. And it really makes your tokens look silly.
Yep.
Goblins, I'm mostly just boarding Electrickeries here. I don't think Celestial Flare is what you need at all, because they're like the swarmiest aggro deck in the format, basically. And they usually have just War Marshal or some other token, so you're not really gaining much of an edge there. But Origin Spellbomb in particular is a card that really wrecks their day.
Yeah, it's typically a 2-for-1 against
pretty
goblins.
Much. Yeah.
It just seems like Electricity is just not very good against them.
It's not great. It's just like another removal though, and you can maybe maneuver yourself into a position where it's good, just by like bolting their Sledders and Raiders and so on. But yeah, as a Goblins player, I find people really overrate how good Electricity is against Goblins. Let's see. I guess one other matchup that's somewhat popular, Azorius Kitty. I find this can be a little tough game 1 because they have Maul Drifter and you have no good answer to that usually. Then bringing in Pyroblast helps out a lot though in post-board games. I'm not sure how do you feel about the matchup, David? Have you played it a lot?
Yeah, I feel like I've actually like only lost 1 game because it's like, and the way that happened was he had just a handful of burn, and I let myself get down to like 13 or 14, thinking that's like totally fine.
Yeah.
Because what I normally do when I play that matchup is sort of try to make my opponent think it's like a race, and then like just sandbag a bunch of life gain because I have tons of it, and then just outdraw them with the Mold Drifters. Because if you can play Mold Drifter, get it back, and then play it again, you like win. So, and then just having the ability to reality acid out their entire team is also really nice. And then 1 Dream Stalker means all their tokens don't do anything. So, unless they can do what that one person did and like burn me out from high numbers, I don't feel like it's a problem at all.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I find Azorius Kitty should be pretty favored in that matchup, but I think a lot depends on their exact list too. Like you said, Reality Acid is really annoying. Post-board is a little better because you can Pyroblast it at least, but it's almost always going to be a 2-for-1 at least. Game 1. I'm usually I'm not ashamed to bolt my guy just to get rid of that card.
Yeah, I see that.
It's just so they can't start bouncing it every turn. And they can also start taking out like Journey to Nowheres or taking out lands with it too if they get ahead.
Yeah, and the one thing for people playing that matchup, I never spreading sees my opponent in that matchup.
Yeah.
Because your list is the rare one that's not running like the Boros Garrison, but already they have the ability to bounce their lands enough.
Yeah.
I've
definitely done that against an Azorius Kitty player that spreading sees one of my lands.
Yeah, I'll only do it if I have 2 of them in my hand, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Maybe this first one will cripple them a little bit, but this has been really interesting for me because I thought the matchups would be almost exactly the same, and they really haven't been. Like a lot of these matchups are like your weaknesses are some of my strong suits, so it's been really cool to hear you say all this stuff.
Yeah. How do you feel about bringing in Patrician Scorn in this matchup? That's what I usually do because they have Journeys and Faith's Fetters and so on. I think it's a pretty solid card.
I think it's that's one of the things I was thinking about when I saw the patrician scorn in your list, and it's, I mean, I don't think it would like.
It's not usually like decimating them, but I think it's just solid.
I think it's definitely like something I do for sure because it's.
Yeah, I've always been bringing them in.
Taking out my spreading seas is like taking out all of your cantripping artifacts. Getting back your guys with like recursion is insane. Because I know like one of the things I like about this matchup is like I'll journey their guy, they'll journey my guy, and then eventually I get to a point where I'll just like reality acid their journey.
Yeah.
And then like it'll bounce my stuff back, and then it'll like start this chain, and I'll end up with all my guys, and they end up with nothing. So if you can do that in one fell swoop on the other side, that card seems really good to me. Matchup.
Yeah. Speaking of journey, I cut those entirely and O-ring in this matchup, just because. Well, obviously, since I'm bringing patrician scorn, I don't really want to have my own enchantments to blow up. But
I was just about to ask that question. I was like, wait a minute, doesn't patrician scorn double edged?
I cut those cards entirely. I think that's good. Yeah, I think that's most of the matchups touched upon.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So, you still planning on running this?
Yeah, for the time being, I am. Haven't had time to jump into any events the last few days, but this weekend I'll probably play a few more. But yeah, I've been pretty happy with the current list I'm on.
It looks like the natural evolution of the deck.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Spellbomb is like the really big adaptation that you need to start playing.
I think I was actually talking to BorosKitty. I think he's playing a version of this as well, based off the comments he said. So,
all right.
I mean, I think you're right. It's the natural evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always just feel like Spellbombs are really good, but they're always also like a prime cutting target.
They are.
Right, for sideboard.
They're just a fine. Like I think Dan said that earlier. It's nice to have a card that's okay game one. You can find something better later. Yep. I find you're usually keeping in at least a couple spell bombs though, especially against aggro. They can buy you a lot of time in the game one situations.
Yep. All right. Well, we're gonna do the sign off then. Thank you for joining us, Jason. How can people get in contact with you if they want to?
DromarX on Magic Online. I'm on MTG Salvation Forum, the forums. Dromar the Banisher. I guess those are the best two ways. I don't have Twitter or anything, so that's a no-go.
Okay. That's okay. Some people don't have Twitter. David, you still here? How can we get?
I can be reached on Twitter I'm at ShapeWolf5. You can find me on Twitch when I stream, which is on occasion, which is just twitch.com/ShapeWolf5 or twitch.tv/ShapeWolf5. And you can read my articles on mtgostrat. I do the Thoughtcast series.
All right, and Dan?
You can reach me on Twitter at mtgostrat, on YouTube at magicgatheringstrat, and you can reach both me and Will on mtgostrat.com.
All right, and I'm Chris. You can contact me on Twitter at cweaver8518 or on MTGO at cweaver. Thank you guys for listening. This has been a Competitive Podcast, episode 10.
Thank you, Jason.